Hello, I'm Rich Herring. I never listen to Nerdology because I am way too cool. But carry on listening, nerds.
Hi, this is Mark, and welcome to episode 15 of Nerdology, sponsored by CSO. My very special guest today is Mr. Declan May. Hey, Declan.
Hello. Hi, Mark. How you doing?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm absolutely fantastic. Thanks very much. Thanks for inviting me
Well,
on.
thanks for coming on. For anyone who's not au fait with your infamy, tell us a little bit about what you do.
I am a writer. I'm mostly a comedy writer, writing for uh, TV and radio programs, and also a script writer. But mainly, I write comedy programs, especially the most recent thing I've worked on is something called Monumental, which was on BBC One, Northern Ireland, so not the proper BBC.
But I've still been recording it and enjoying it. It's been very good.
Thank you very much. You're the only one. And
I am that one.
you are that one. You're that lone viewer in England.
I'll make the wife watch it as well.
Okay, well, those two people in England have watched the TV program I worked on, and I'm currently working on a couple of
They're top secret
TV
projects, aren't they?
top secret projects. Yeah, really top secret, exciting projects like another series of Monumental and a couple of top secret film projects,
Yeah.
but nothing really important. I'm not working on Doctor Who. That's my ultimate ambition, to work on Doctor Who, but I'll have to wait until
So thanks
the
to the wonders of
70th
podcasting,
anniversary.
if you're listening to this in, say, 2 or 3 years' time, you may well be listening to someone who is a scriptwriter for Doctor Who.
Well, either that or a scriptwriter's assistant for EastEnders.
Oh, no.
One or the other. But in any case, no. I'm currently working on a. I don't know if I can say it because it's sort of public domain. I'm currently working on a screenplay for a popular European comic book character, and they're making a film version of this popular European comic book character. It's not Tintin, it's the other one.
Okay, yeah, I think I've worked it out, possibly. But have you, dear listener? So you mentioned EastEnders there in passing. That may crop up again in this conversation.
Oh my God, it will. It will crop up again, and I'll tell you a horrible story about that when we come to the time.
Oh, that sounds like it could be interesting. So I've dragged Declan on to talk about the Doctor Who anniversary stories, because this year, as you will very well know if you've listened to this podcast enough times, is the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who. So we thought it'd be fun to look back at the previous anniversary stories and give them a little bit of a critique and talk about what we love about them, what's not so good about them. Before we get started on that, as you may have noticed, right at the start, we mentioned CSO, which is our new sponsor. It's
what is CSO?
Oh, thanks, Declan. I'm glad you asked. It's a fanzine. It's created by the very talented Scott Burdett, who is also responsible for such works as Fanwanac. Try saying that when you've had a few.
I have tried.
It's a very cool fanzine. When I used to get fanzines when I was much, much younger, you tended to expect them to be pretty basic. Print quality wasn't that great. Some cool stuff in them, but a very sort of basic booklet. Whereas this is a proper magazine. It's really nice quality paper. They've got some great people writing as well. So it's still, fans, but there are fans and there are fans, and there's some really great writers in there. The first issue went on sale not too long ago, and they've had all sorts of cool stuff in there. They had Lost in Space, lots of cult stuff like
Wow.
Quatermass, Doom Watch. So it's well worth a read. So that ends this commercial plug for Scott Burditt's Empire.
Just a question about that, if you don't mind, Mark. But yeah, I don't know if you, whenever you were younger, whenever they were more popular, whenever you got a fanzine, didn't they used to just, I don't know about you, but for me, they always used to come in like sort of photocopied
Yeah.
paper, stapled, like just A4 sheets stapled together, black and white. But the quality was always great. You always used to get sort of interesting tidbits, especially the Doctor Who ones. I used to get a Doctor Who one back I think in the early 90s. I can't remember the title, but it used to like give you episode guides and tell you about the latest Virgin New adventure or missing adventure or, that sort of stuff. Is this the same sort of thing?
This is very much it's like a regular magazine that you go into your newsagents and pick up. So it's a much more professional looking thing than I would have considered to be a fanzine all those years ago. So check it out if you want to know a bit more about it. If you go to csofanzine.blogspot.co.uk, you'll be able to see all the info on there, and it's well worth looking at. And hopefully, Scott might get a few readers out of this.
I think he will. It looks fantastic. I tell you what as well, it's like fanzines were the internet in the pre-internet era.
Yeah,
really.
very much so.
That's all we had. There was not just for Doctor Who, but for everything from music, for cinema, everything. It was a fanzine. You subscribed to a fanzine, you sent off your, I don't know what it was, £7 postal order, and you got a fanzine sent to you. And this is sort of keeping in the spirit of that. It looks fantastic.
I still somewhere up in my parents' loft at their house have probably a good 5 years worth of a fanzine called When Skies Are Grey, which will have no interest to you whatsoever because you're not really much of a sports fan. It's an Everton fanzine.
Oh, Everton.
Yeah, and it was a really good read because the official kind of match day program would be great. It would give you all the sort of stats and stuff, but it was very dry, bit boring. Whereas this would not really pull any punches, and they just say what they thought, and it was a good read. I don't know if it's still going, but yeah, that was one.
I wonder how many of those fans, people who worked for that, what did you call it? When Skies Are Grey?
Yeah,
what's it called?
When Skies Are Grey.
When Skies Are Grey. I wonder how many of them went on to become, I don't know, whatever, proper sports reporters or journalists or whatnot.
It's a good kind of test bed, isn't it, for someone who's looking to get into writing?
Absolutely. I mean, you look at a lot of the old Doctor Who Appreciation Society fans. Well, they weren't really fanzines; they were newsletters. But a lot of the old Doctor Who Appreciation Society publications. Then that spawned, what was it? DWB. I think that was the magazine, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And then that became Dreamwatch. Am I right?
Oh, I don't know. You're going a little bit outside of my wealth of knowledge.
No. I'm just guessing. But it started as a Doctor Who fanzine, then became a Doctor Who, not a magazine, but Doctor Who publication, then became a general sci-fi magazine. It was around the same time as TV Zone and Starburst.
Oh yeah.
Starburst, of course, is still going.
Starburst.
I think
who are they?
Starburst. The Starburst. They were a 1970s progressive rock group. The Starburst. You remember their album Take Us to the Sun, We'll Never Forget It Again. Oh my God, I'm going to die. That was it. No, there was Starburst and TV Zone and Dreamwatch, and they sort of covered all of science fiction. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Dreamwatch started as a Doctor Who fanzine. Please write in.
I reckon Sucky Kark will know the answer to that one because he knows everything.
Well, I tell you what, the thing about these fanzines, I mean, there's the New Zealand fanzine, the Doctor Who New Zealand fanzine. I can't remember what it's called, by Paul Scoons, I think his name is.
Yeah, that name rings a bell.
Yeah, he's recently written a book about the Doctor Who comic strips, the pre Doctor Who magazine, Doctor Who
Right.
comic strips.
Ah, yeah.
Like in Century 21 and
Yeah.
all those sort of things. He ran the New Zealand Doctor Who Society. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And that fanzine lasted for quite a few years, but that spawned so many things. I mean, um, Paul Scoons himself wrote a novelization of Shada,
Oh, right.
and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the City of Death. He wrote
Yeah,
a
because they
fan
didn't get
novelization of
they didn't get
that.
a target release, did they?
There's no target release,
Hmm.
so that's fans doing stuff, and they've gotten places. I mean, Paul Scoons, okay, he's recently released this book about the Doctor Who comic strips, but also Paul Scoons is mentioned in an episode of Doctor Who.
Really?
Yes.
That's a claim to
David Tennant
fame.
episode. Well, I assume it's not a common name. You would admit
No, that's true.
Scoones, I think. The next Doctor. Do you remember the next Doctor?
With David Morrissey.
And with David Morrissey and Dervla Kerwin's playing Miss
Hartigan, yeah.
She's standing by the graveside, and the Cybermen attack, but she shouts the names of a certain number of.
Ah, okay.
She says, "Mr. X, Mr. Y, Mr. Scoons, stay where you are." And they're the ones who are transformed into sort of cyber slave. Do you remember that?
Yeah, the sort of Dickensian Cybermen.
Dickensian Cybermen. But Scoons is one of them. Now, it's not a name you would come up with off the top of your head.
No, it's kind of up there with Grimwade syndrome, isn't it?
Grimwade syndrome.
Robophobia.
Syndrome. But there you go. I mean, and fans bleed into the new adventures. These were all fans who wrote the new adventures. Paul Cornell.
I mean, yeah, the new adventures spawned so many new Who people now. You've got Cornell, you've got Russell T Davies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's lots of names in there. So yeah, it's a good starting point, I think, for someone who wants to get into writing.
I think it is. I mean, even in terms of, what you're doing, podcasting and all that. Mm-hmm. I think Doctor Who, or I suppose you could say any sci-fi, I hate to use the word, but franchise or property.
Yeah, property, yeah.
It spawns creativity. I mean, you look at the fan fiction that came out of Harry Potter or Twilight. Okay, it's not my cup of tea, but it's valid.
Yeah.
That spawned 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah.
Okay, again, not my cup of tea or cup of whatever. Doctor Who did the same thing and continues to do the same thing. People who perhaps in the past weren't interested or didn't know much about writing for character or writing for TV or being interested in another world, they suddenly sat down, wrote their own stories, wrote their own articles. And I think that's, I only got into writing because I'd read Doctor Who novelizations or watched Doctor Who or seen the behind the scenes videos or just wanted to be part of that world. I think it provokes creativity without sounding too pretentious.
No, I think that's a very valid point. There's a podcast which sadly no longer exists called Bridging the Rift, which was very much about fan creativity. And it's a shame because it was a really good show. So if you're listening out there, guys, maybe we could have a reunion show for the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who.
So you have to now. It's been said on the internet. That makes it official.
Anyway, we're digressing here slightly. We were going to talk about the anniversary stories, weren't we?
Yes, we were.
So if we're going to do this chronologically, we really got to start with the Three Doctors.
Yes, the Three Doctors. When's the last time you saw that, Mark?
I actually dug out the DVD the other day because we were discussing doing this. So I hadn't watched it for a little while, and yes, it's a bit wobbly, and the effects aren't the greatest, even for the time. They weren't cutting edge, but there's a lot to like in it.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, it's wonderful. It's a beautiful package. I mean,
And for me as a kid, I don't know, we were talking before we started recording about regional variations on BBC One.
oh God, yeah,
Now, as a kid growing up in England, we had a whole series of programs called The Five Faces of Doctor Who, which was something that they came up with when Peter Davison took over. And they figured it would be a good way to introduce to the sort of kids watching at that point the fact that there'd been other doctors, and I don't know whether it was an idea to try and sort of ease them into the new one. So they decided they'd show stories from each of the previous doctors, and
yeah.
the Three Doctors was one of those. And at that age, I was aware that they'd been previous doctors, even though Tom was the only one that I'd seen on screen. And
Okay.
we mentioned before about the Target novels. I'd been snaffling those up pretty voraciously. So I'd already got a bit of an idea of Troughton and Hartnell and Pertwee.
Yeah.
So for me, it was just fantastic, because back then, I think what a lot of younger listeners may not really get is that you didn't really get repeats very often back then at all. So,
And
go on.
if you did get repeats, sorry to interrupt, but I mean, if you did get repeats, they were. I mean, how would we know when they were on? Okay, we the Radio Times or the newspaper, but you'd sort of stumble across them really, rather than them
Yeah.
being signalled in advance.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean
it was.
they did hype this one up a bit. I think they did.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember them advertising it a lot. So for me as a kid, watching those shows that they put out, this was one of them. It was great, and it's the chance to see, particularly this one, because it was the chance to see Troughton in colour, alongside Pertwee. So obviously, as a young kid, that was just fantastic, to see all three of them. Sadly,
Is that the first you'd seen of Troughton?
they showed the Crotons in that season.
Yeah, that's right.
But
Yeah.
that was about it for Troughton.
I mean, I remember. I mean, I don't remember the Five Faces of Doctor Who because I think it was 1980, wasn't it? 1981.
Yeah, it would have been.
It was just before
Yeah.
Castrovalva.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, 81.
Yeah, that's right.
And I don't remember watching that because I was only 2 at the time.
Oh, you're making me feel old now.
Well, yeah, I remember you sitting me on your knee and saying you need to watch this.
And that was only last
I remember
week.
saying, "Who's that?" Yeah, exactly. Your hands were everywhere.
I know, I couldn't help myself.
I know. I shouldn't have got the implant. No, all I remember is that the Five Faces of Doctor Who. Whenever I really got into Doctor Who, everyone talked about this. I mean, when I say everyone, I mean
Fans of a certain age.
Doctor Who, fans of a certain age, the Doctor Who magazine, the fanzines, because I used to subscribe to fanzines. But everyone always says that the first time that they saw the Three Doctors, and it was, well, for most people it was in colour. A lot of people still have black and white TVs back in
True.
1981. I mean, we certainly had a black and white television back in 1981. But a lot of people said, okay, that's the first time I got into Doctor Who. Okay, they'd seen the Crotons, and I think before that they'd seen not the Mutants. What's it called? The Hartnell one that they had.
Trying to think now.
Was it the Dalek one? The first Dalek story?
They had an Unearthly Child.
Another child, but didn't they follow it up with something? Did they do?
I think they had an Unearthly Child, the Crotons, and they had two Pertwees. They had Carnival of Monsters, and they had the Three Doctors.
Yeah, it was the Three Doctors. I think that for a lot of fans or audiences, for the first time, they realized, okay, this this is a story with a legacy, with a past. And I mean, I remember the first time I saw the Three Doctors. I think I was 11 or 12 years old. I remember I saw the Three Doctors before I saw the Five Doctors.
Yeah.
So I already got the fact that doctors could meet. But I remember seeing that and thinking,
Yeah.
okay, it's the same guy, it's the same story, it's the same man but split into three pieces or whatever way you look at it. And it was sort of, I don't know, it's the first legacy story. It's the first story you can say, this is marking a legacy, this is marking something important.
Yeah.
They probably didn't envisage that at the time. It was the 10th anniversary. No, it wasn't even the 10th anniversary. It was in the 10th season, wasn't it?
I think they planned to record it in season 9 and then hold it back for season 10. And then there was some kind of problem with how that season was panning out. So they had to push that back to season 10. But then, yeah, I think you're right. I think it got broadcast at the end of 72 and it kind of went just into January of 73.
Because, I mean, that's the first time they possibly could have done that. That's the first, obviously it's the first time they could have done it with Three Doctors. But can you imagine, okay, let's say the 5th anniversary of Doctor Who, which would have been 1968.
Yeah.
Middle of, what would have been the story? Well, anyway, it would have been Troughton. Imagine the two Doctors. It wouldn't have worked.
I think what works for me in this story is that dynamic between Troughton and Pertwee. It's fantastic. I could watch that forever.
Yeah, I could. I think that's the best thing about it. Even the fact that Hartnell isn't there. Essentially, it's like a dandy, a clown, and half a Hartnell.
Well, he was a very ill man at the time.
He was very ill, and that whole thing about it being recorded he recorded his bits in his own garage. That's not true.
They went to
I only
Elstree.
found that out recently. Where did they go?
I think they went to Elstree to do that.
Oh, I didn't know
Elstree
that.
Studios, yeah.
So, I suppose maybe they'll address that in the an adventure in space and time. I don't know.
Very possibly.
But, very possibly. But the thing is that what fascinates me about that is that's the first time they've acknowledged, okay, this is the same guy, but it's three different versions of him. It's three incarnations. Okay, that's groundbreaking.
Yeah.
We look at it as a Three Doctors story. Okay, there's Three Doctors over there, but sometimes we seem to forget, we don't take on board the fact that these are the Three Doctors together. They're acknowledging this. They're acknowledging it's the same guy 3 times over. And I think that's,
as a kid, it just blows you away. And
It blows you away. Even if you have rudimentary knowledge of Doctor Who, everyone knows, okay, he changes his face, he changes his body. But the Three Doctors together, that was pretty cool. And as you said, the interplay between Pertwee and Troughton, I don't know if in real life how they got on. They seem to get on.
Well, I've heard stories, admittedly, you could always take this with a pinch of salt, but I get the impression that Jon Pertwee is very much a straight guy in as much as he wanted to do it exactly as it was in the script. And I don't think he dealt very well with any kind of deviation from that. Whereas Patrick Troughton was very playful and wanted to kind of improvise, and I don't think that went down too well.
I think Troughton was more of an instinctual actor. He just sort of played off the scene however he saw fit. He played off the other actors. But I heard the story, and correct me if I'm wrong, that originally the case, there were going to be Jamie and Zoe in the story.
That's right.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, Fraser Hines couldn't do it because he was contracted to Emmerdale Farm, as it was back then, Emmerdale now.
Ah, okay.
So his lines effectively went to Benton.
So Benton was Jamie, essentially, but he was the foil.
Yeah,
he was the
sidekick.
The sidekick. Well, what I heard as well that, it was suggested to Jon Pertwee, or John Pertwee, as some people call him, that we're going to bring in some ex-companions, Zoe, maybe even Ben and Polly.
Yeah.
And Pertwee vetoed it. He said no. He said it won't work well in story terms. But I think what Pertwee meant was it won't work well for Pertwee.
Yeah.
That's what I
think in fairness, because he
understand.
was the Doctor at the time, I think you've got to pay a little bit of respect to your leading
Absolutely.
man, and he does have to be, the main part of the story. But of course, you've got these other two great actors, albeit William Hartnell at that point was quite ill. I think they'd originally planned, Dave Martin and Bob Baker were the writers. They'd written an initial script which had Hartnell much more involved in what was going on, and it's only partway through writing that they realised that he really wasn't well enough to do it, so they had to do a fairly hasty rewrite, which, as you say, ended up with him really just having a little cameo, and that was really about it.
Yeah, essentially, and because the only part I could see Hartnell being in it is at the bits in Omega's lair. That's the only part I could see Hartnell being involved, if he was to be involved more.
Well, my memory might be cheating here, but I seem to remember talk of a different script, in as much as the opening was going to be set in a graveyard, and Death was going to be playing chess, and you'd have three kings on the board. So I think it was quite a different story, and they just kind of adapted it and kind of changed elements of it in order to suit what was to become this story. And I think also there were some concerns about zombies and graveyards not necessarily being the sort of stuff for tea time telly for kids.
Well, what I learned is that the Omega, what's the proper pronunciation, Mark? I don't know.
Oh, it's whatever you want to call him. I think they call him Omega in the story.
Omega.
I don't know.
They could have called the whole serial Omega 3.
Oh God,
that would have been perfect. No, but what I heard originally that he was going to be called OHM.
Oh yeah, I think I read that as well.
Which is who upside down. That was the whole sort of original storyline. It was going to be OHM, who upside down. But I think that resurfaced somewhere. I think it's some book. I can't remember. But in any case, the fact of, okay, if you ever notice whenever you watch that story, whenever it goes back to the Time Lord planet scenes, whenever they go back to the, still, it's never
it's not
named
Gallifrey yet, is it?
It's not Gallifrey. That's what I was coming to. It's not Gallifrey. It's never Gallifrey. Until when? Is it the
Time Warrior?
The Time Warrior?
Yeah.
The Time Warrior. Who made that up? Who wrote the Time Warrior?
That's Robert Holmes.
That's Robert Holmes. So Gallifrey essentially is his creation, because he followed that up with the Deadly Assassin.
Yeah. I don't think he liked the way that they were portrayed in the previous ones. They looked a bit pompous and what have you, so he thought he'd go for a slightly different take and have them as really corrupt politician types.
But in the previous story, in the last story, that I'm trying to think of appearances of the Time Lords. Okay, you'd one in Terror of the Autons, the one in the bowler hat. And then previous to that, you had the War Games.
Yeah.
Is that right? Am I right when I say that?
Yeah, I think I maybe possibly not getting this right. I think it goes War Games, then Three Doctors, and then I don't think until Terror of the Autons. JR's probably going to be listening to this and going, "Oh, you idiots! It's this story."
It was serial 7B.1. No, the thing is that my problem is with the Time Lords, and we'll come on to this later when we talk more about the anniversary special. I think the Time Lords are the least interesting part of any Doctor Who story.
And I think that's why Russell T Davies wanted to leave them out of the new show.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I can understand. It's like when you have Superman, right? You've got Superman, who is meant to be the most amazing man on the planet.
Yeah.
he's superhuman, he's got all these powers. But then you introduce Supergirl and Superwoman and Superboy and Crypto the Superdog.
Yeah.
It sort of takes away from Superman. And I feel the same way with the Time Lords.
Yeah.
In these earlier stories, okay, the Time Lords are still a bit outside. They're still a bit. Even in the Three Doctors, they're monitoring. They get a power drain.
Yeah.
Earth gets a power drain, but they're still not. They're not necessary to the plot. It could be anyone else.
Yeah.
You know, it could have been a moon base who suffered a power drain.
Yeah.
And the second Doctor just happened to come along, or something like that.
Yeah.
All I think is that the Time Lords became too much of a part of the mythos, too much a part of the
Yeah.
story. I don't know. What do you think, Mark?
Well, I think this may have been said on another podcast that I've featured on, that by the end of Pertwee's era, they've kind of really taken all the mystique out of the Doctor's character. They've explained where he comes from. They've shown you where he's from. They've shown you the culture and what have you. So it's, I think Russell T Davies did the right thing by omitting them. Yeah, you got the Master who comes in, which is great foil for the Doctor, but I think having him as the last Time Lord works far better for a modern audience. One other thing I think on this story, which I can't see them really doing at this point in time, is albeit the first anniversary story, they avoided the temptation to go for something like the Daleks or the Cybermen, so they go for
That's true.
Omega.
Yeah.
And could you really see them doing that this time? Go for a completely new character?
Or yeah, exactly. Imagine on the 50th anniversary they have Matt Smith and say David Tennant facing Magaforth, the new Time Lord villain. Okay, no one's ever heard of Magaforth before. I've just made the name up.
Copyright.
Copyright, if they do use Magaforth, whatever the hell that means, that's my copyright. But imagine they do that and everyone goes, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Why not have the 10th and 11th Doctor fight against the Daleks, or, my God, against the Cybermen, or whatever? What I think is that this story works well in the Pertwee era. It works well in the unit stuck on Earth story arc.
Yeah.
If you want to look at it like that.
Because that's
And
the
at
end of that arc, isn't it? Because after the Three Doctors, he gets his TARDIS back, doesn't he?
Gets his freedom,
Yeah.
essentially, after his prison sentence. And, well, by the way, what is it that he can't remember? Because he knows the TARDIS. He's been deprived of the secret of time travel.
They take away that vital, I forget what it's called now. Is it the time space something or other? The little sort of gadgety thing that's missing from the console, and then they restore his memory of coordinates and things like that. But
it's sort of like a block, an amnesia, a block that he can't access that part of his brain where all the information is, and then they give that back to him. But what's astounding about the Three Doctors, when you actually look at it from afar, you realize this is the first time. Okay, this series is just 10 years old. I mean, okay, we're 2 years off the new series being 10 years old.
Yeah.
When you think about it.
Kind of gives it a bit of perspective, doesn't it?
It does. And imagine saying the 10th anniversary of the new run, if I talk about it like that, since Christopher Eccleston came back, Russell T Davies, and they did a story where you had Matt Smith, David Tennant, and on a monitor, Christopher Eccleston.
I like your thinking, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Imagine they do that. Okay. There's going to be people who are watching it who are going to have no idea who the hell Christopher Eccleston is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Right? So they're going to want to tell a good story. They want to tell a good adventurous story. they'll maybe have the way of the world now is everyone with the internet and with everything, everyone knows who who the last doctor was,
Hmm.
who the doctor before that was. Yes, we can look that up. But back in 1973, we didn't have that luxury, you
No.
know. We didn't have that. So say they do this anniversary with Smith and Tennant and Eccleston on the monitor, and there's going to be people wondering who's that guy, who's that northern git on the TARDIS monitor,
Apologies
right?
to our northern listeners.
Yes, especially those who come from Manchester or Salford or wherever the hell he's from. Um, you need to have a good story to justify that. And what I wonder is the Three Doctors a good enough story to justify all of that?
As you say, I think it works within that period, but if you were looking to pick, the ultimate episode of Doctor Who, I'm not sure that would really rank very highly in that list.
No, no. I mean, it's a beautiful episode. I love it. I mean,
Yeah, I do.
beautiful series. I absolutely love it, but not for the reasons I thought I would. I mean, I rewatched it recently because we were doing this,
Hmm.
and the things that I liked about it were nothing to do with the multi-doctor aspect.
No.
I don't know if you felt the same.
I think it's more about for me, it's more about the characterizations and for instance, you've got the Brigadier, I think, comes into his own quite well in this one,
Very
where
much so.
he's convinced
Very
they've gone
much
to
so.
Chroma
Yes. Yes.
and meeting up with Pat Troughton's Doctor again. And it's just little moments. It's a collection of little moments that
Yeah.
tick all the boxes of sad fanboys like me who, want to be able to see all those guys together, and it works on that level. And I think it's a fun
Very much
story.
so. It's a fun story. It doesn't make an awful lot of sense,
No,
but it's a fun story. And I think, I suppose we'll come on to this afterwards, but I almost prefer the way it's treated there to the way it is in the Five Doctors. It's
okay. Well, since
part of
you
the
since you brought it
story.
up, let's talk about the Five Doctors.
Okay, okay. Oh God.
Did you watch this when it went out, or?
I watched it when it came out, and well, we talked about this before we started recording the podcast. I live in Northern Ireland, and I was, 1983? I was 6 or 7 at the time.
Pretty much a
And
perfect age.
yeah, well, the perfect age, and it was part of Children in Need. And I remember so looking forward to it because I'd seen things about it. I'd read things in the Radio
Yeah,
Times
they
and
had
the
that special edition, didn't
newspaper.
they?
They had the special edition. My God! Oh, and also after this, can we go back to the anniversary edition, the 10th anniversary edition of the Radio Times?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. But they went on about this 20 all the doctors all together and Peter Davison. Okay, a bit of context. About 3 or 4 weeks before that, maybe even 2 months before that, I wrote off to the BBC and asked for photographs from Doctor Who, helped by my dad. My dad obviously wrote the letter. I was 6 or 7. It was probably a scrawl, and I got sent these photographs, publicity photographs of Tegan and Turlough. And even though she wasn't in the show at the time, I had a photograph of Nisa
Oh, sweet.
and Peter Davison. None of them were signed, the buggers, but I got these photographs in a BBC envelope with a BBC stamp on them, and I was so happy, so proud. So I was sitting in front of the TV that night when Children in Need was on with my Doctor Who publicity photos,
Oh, that's
counting
a really
down
cool
Doctor Who's.
story.
Well, it's absolutely true, but it gets sadder because counting down Doctor Who's going to be on in 5 minutes. We're going to be showing the new 20th anniversary episode of Doctor Who.
So for you guys outside the UK, you may not know what this is about. Children in Need is a charity that the BBC do a yearly live telethon for, and ironically, it's hosted by an Irishman. Uh, so yeah, it's this live show, and of course they'll be building up the excitement about it, and they'll keep on saying, "Yeah, pledge your money," and it's coming up in 5 minutes. You'll get really excited. So carry on, Declan.
So got really excited. It's going to be on in 5 minutes. Terry Wogan standing there. Oh, it's only 5 minutes till Doctor Who's on, or whatever he said. I'm paraphrasing. So I'm so excited. I can't wait. I've been waiting for this for weeks. Comes to the time Doctor Who's going to be on. And now, for viewers in Northern Ireland, we're going back to BBC Belfast. And then they show some Irish dancing or someone hitting a leprechaun with a stick or whatever the hell they do. So what happened was that in England and Wales and Scotland, they got to see the 20th anniversary special of Doctor Who. We get to see some local school play nonsense instead. However, it's not all about, we had to wait 20 minutes.
Oh.
But those 20 minutes were crucial. That means every other Doctor Who fan got to see it 20 minutes before me.
And at 6 or 7, that's really important.
It's really important. And I remember and then it comes to the point when you're 6 or 7, it's your bedtime, so you don't get to see it all.
Oh.
The last thing I remember was, if I recall, John Pertwee talking to the Master from Bessie.
Oh,
and I think,
no.
okay, Declan, it's time to go to bed. Something like that. And when you're 6 or 7, you don't argue with your parents because everything they say is the truth.
Exactly.
But anyway, so that was the way it'd been built up so much.
We didn't have a video recorder back then, so
we
couldn't watch it again.
Get a video recorder, Mark?
I think we got ours about 85.
I think I was around the same, 85, 86.
Yeah.
Actually. Before then, I mean, once you missed something, you missed it.
That was it, yeah.
That was it. All 85, 86. I think the first thing, I'm going to show my geek credentials here, but the first thing I ever recorded on VHS was an episode of Star Trek.
Sweet.
And I'm not even a Star Trek fan. It was the one where Captain Kirk fights the big lizard in the
Oh, the Gorn.
The Gorn. I can't believe you know its name, Mark.
It's sad, isn't it?
Yes, that's the first thing I ever recorded. And it goes all fuzzy halfway through because we had a bad signal.
Oh, those were the days.
Video. I've still got the video. But no, the Five Doctors, it was the best. I mean, I got the book, the library book, about 2 months later.
Well, that's another thing with the Five Doctors. The Target book came out before the program.
Is that true? Is that an actual? Yeah. Did you read it before you saw it?
Oh, God, I honestly can't remember now. I remember it having, I'm pretty sure it had a silver cover with like profiles of the Doctors' faces. But I remember reading it, but I can't remember if I read it before or after the program went out.
I think I'm the same as you, yeah. I can't remember. I remember the book. I find it's hard to separate it from the story itself. It was Terrence Dicks, wasn't it?
Yes,
who wrote the book as well. He novelized his own story. The thing that I remember the most is that in the trailer for the Five Doctors, it had the first Doctor by Richard Herndl pushing the Dalek down the alley, pushing him down, and the Dalek exploding itself. I remember that as clear as day. I also remember the Shada bits. I don't know why I remember them. But whenever I watched it, they just seemed to stick with me because I remember thinking, that's the Doctor that was the one before.
Yeah.
Which I imagine a lot of kids nowadays think whenever they watch Matt Smith, they maybe have a vague memory of, the Doctor before, David Tennant. He's the one with the big sideburn. I just remember that having an impression on
If they're 6 or 7 now watching Matt Smith, that's exactly what they'll be getting, isn't it?
Yeah, if you're 6 or 7 now, when did you start watching it? Okay, you're better than at math than I am, but okay, sometime in the late 20 noughts. But in any case, I mean, that's all we had. I
Yeah.
mean, it was a remarkable thing. The thing with the Five Doctors is, I don't know, I may say something controversial here.
Mm.
I don't know if I count it as a Doctor Who story.
Ooh.
I don't mean to say that in any provocative way, but I think I don't.
It's. I suppose it is a separate entity in as much as because it was broadcast as part of Children in Need, you kind of look at it as like a feature length movie. But
Yeah,
yeah, I know particularly Doctor Who fans, we do like to obsess about continuity and stuff like that. But I just revel in it. I'm a big fan of these multi-Doctor stories. I know they're not perhaps regarded as the coolest or the best, but I just think, to see those guys do their stuff, bear in mind,
oh God, yeah, yeah.
when it's a chance to see Pertwee, admittedly not much of Baker, and Troughton again, just to see those guys on screen again is fantastic.
It's wonderful. I mean, the reason I don't, I don't want to get into any trouble here. I don't want to cause any problem. But the reason I don't see it as like, I hate to use the word and I hate using it, but canon,
Mm,
okay, and this is going to cause problems. Okay, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, the second Doctor, okay, Patrick Troughton,
yeah.
okay, he obviously remembers the Pertwee Doctor from the previous occasion,
Hmm.
okay?
Yeah.
The
Fancy
banter
pants.
that they have between them, yeah, fancy pants. What's he say, fancy pants?
Scarecrow.
Fancy pants and Scarecrow. Okay, so obviously those two have met before. There's a relationship between those two. You see it the first time
Mm,
they meet each other.
yeah.
Then you have the fact of, okay, there's two facts. There's Sarah Jane
Hmm.
and there's Susan.
Yeah.
Okay? The Doctor hasn't seen Susan. Okay, the fifth Doctor hasn't seen Susan since he left her on Earth
Yeah.
after the Dalek invasion.
Mm.
He looks at her as if he doesn't give a damn.
Well, he's just a
You know
cold,
when she,
cold swine, isn't he?
ah, Mark, yes, he is. Maybe he is just cold, but it's
Or
like there's no
maybe, or just
conversation.
maybe. I mean, Robert Holmes is famous for ignoring stuff that he doesn't really want to follow up on. Maybe they just. I mean, these days in the modern show, they pay so much attention to the characters and their development and the whole sort of relationship between the main characters that you wouldn't really see that happen now. But back then, I don't think they were quite
Yes,
so meticulous about all that sort of stuff. And very
you're
often you
right.
get characters leaving, and then the following week it'd be a case of, oh, well, new character turns up. Who was the one that was on last week? Don't know, can't remember.
It was the television grammar of the time.
Yeah.
Essentially, it didn't matter. Move onwards. It doesn't matter. No one's going to remember last week. We don't have catch up. We don't have VCRs.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Mark. Actually, but the thing is, I mean, the Sarah Jane Smith thing bothers me. Okay,
The way she was written
I
out and then to have that, I do know what you mean.
and then when she comes back, okay, I know this is What was it that you say in Blue Box podcast? Retro,
Oh,
putting something from the present onto the past,
retconning.
retconning.
Yeah.
Okay, so when Sarah Jane Smith sees the 10th Doctor, David Tennant,
Mm.
and she says, "You left me in Glasgow. You said it was Croydon, but it was Glasgow. And then I never saw you again. Why did you leave me?" And
Mm.
every fan is thinking, but he did see you again in the Dark Tower on Gallifrey. right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
So my rationale for that is that none of them remember that. That's my way of squaring the circle, so to speak.
So it's kind of like a more extreme version of the end of the War Games where all of them forget, including the doctors.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh, Jesus, don't get me started on the war games because the doctor sees Jamie and Zoe, right?
Yeah.
And they're saying, "Doctor, save us, save us, save us." And the doctor says, "Hold on, the Time Lords erased every memory of me
Ah, but they
from
didn't.
your mind."
They
But
left
he
the first
didn't.
adventure intact.
Oh my God, Mark! Thank God you said that. Really, I'm so glad that you said that. That's it, exactly. Okay, if you want to be pricky and fanny about it, it's annoying. But if you're just a viewer watching it, it's lovely.
Hmm.
You're reminded of something that you watched. Someone in 1983 watching The Five Doctors is reminded of a Doctor Who story they watched when they were 16. You know?
Yeah.
That's the whole point of it. It doesn't matter. Continuity, who gives a damn?
The thing
But
is,
for
these
Doctor Who
days with
fans,
DVDs and downloads on iTunes and what have you, you can watch these things again and again and again whenever you like. Whereas, as you said before, back then it was a one-off. You got to see it, probably wouldn't see it again.
exactly. And that's the way it was made.
So
It
they
was
can take
made,
liberties like that.
they could take liberties like that. But at the same time, I mean, I think that, say, when they do the 50th anniversary now,
Hmm.
imagine there was a line in the 50th anniversary special where the doctor says, "Oh, Zoe and Jamie, they died." Say, for example, I'm just
Hmm.
choosing a random example.
Yeah.
They died. I never saw them again. Is that fair enough? Is that okay? Can we as fans live with that? Is that valid? Does that overwrite the rest of the story?
Yeah. I mean, there is a point where you can get so involved in canon and continuity. I mean, I've spoken about this on the other show, and it gets to the point where in certain eras of the show they were so obsessed with continuity that it was at the detriment of the actual storytelling.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I mean,
Whatever works best for the story at the time
yeah,
should be valid. Yeah, I agree with you.
and that was what
I
Robert
think,
Holmes would do
yeah.
repeatedly. Anything from canon that didn't really fit in with what he wanted, he'd just completely ignore it and just go on and write what he wanted to write.
What was your experience of watching The Five Doctors?
Well, yeah, I would have been 10. So I would have been sat there in front of the TV, desperately waiting for it to come on. You,
Did you know
unfortunately,
it was coming on?
yeah, oh
You knew
yeah, I
full
was
well.
glued to the
Yeah,
set. You were watching Irish Country Dancing. I was watching Doctor Who, and it was great. At that point, I'd only seen a little bit of Hartnell, so although Herndl, I think he's on a hiding to nothing. Really, you can't recreate someone
Did you
else's
know he
performance.
wasn't the first Doctor? Because I didn't know at the time. I was too young to know.
Even at that age, I was a complete nerd. I knew that this
Right.
wasn't the original guy.
Right. Okay.
But because I didn't have all of those stories to go back and watch again, I just accepted him as the first Doctor.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I loved it. It's I'm a sucker for all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure how
Did
it
you?
can work in the 50th. The only thing I was thinking of the other day, which could be quite cool in a way, but I don't know if the budget or if it would make any sense in a narrative, is because obviously you've got, if you were going to include all of them, you've got the fact that the first three are no longer with us.
Yeah.
You've got Tom and Colin don't really resemble very much what they did back when they were making
Not
the
at
show,
all, really.
and
Yeah.
neither do you or I.
No.
But yeah, you've got those issues. I think it would be kind of cool if they had some kind of, they go through some sort of portal, and on the other side, when they step out, they're animated. So you go from a
Oh
live
my
action thing to an animated thing. That would
god!
be pretty cool.
Yeah, like they, for example, they go from, let's say you take a scene from the season 18,
Hmm.
the last Tom Baker, he walks through a door
Hmm.
and comes out the other side animated.
Mm.
Tom Baker sounds exactly the same. I don't know if you've listened to any
Yeah.
of the
Oh,
Big
yeah.
Finish. I mean,
They're very good. I do enjoy
or
those.
Colin Baker. Colin Baker has grown as a doctor. I mean, he's really he's still the Sixth Doctor, but he's become this whole other Sixth Doctor. But animated, you could see him as you want to see him.
Yeah.
You could see him as the Sixth Doctor in the coat and all that.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, I
oh my
think that'd
god,
be
that's
pretty
really
cool.
good, Mark. That's really good, actually. You could have an animated. They could all be animated, actually. All the Doctors, all standing there
Well, that's
together.
it. You got Matt Smith. He's in the sort of real world being filmed, and then he has to step through a portal to do something, and then he ends up being animated. And what the hell's going on? It's like a virtual reality or some sort of alternate universe, and he runs
Mark,
into
you
his
need to
other selves.
copyright this. Copyright this. Seriously. That's too good. Seriously, that's it. That's how you do it. And also, the thing is, you can have in the Hartnell, Troughton, and Pertwee Doctors.
Hmm.
You have them there.
I don't know if you'd use voice artists or whether you just selectively. I don't know. There is that when I talked to Peter about this on a previous one. There is that kind of thing about respecting someone who's no longer with us, and not wanting to do them a disservice through not really just wanting to put them on the screen regardless of whether it's right or wrong. I don't know. It's a bit of an unusual thing to do.
It is, but what would you feel about recasting? Because we know it's already been done. Okay, it's already
Yeah.
been done with Herndl replacing Hartnell.
Mm.
Okay, now we know with an adventure in time, space and time, or time and space.
Space and
What is
time.
it? Space and time. David Bradley's playing Hartnell,
Yeah.
playing the First Doctor.
Hmm.
You've got Reese Shearsmith playing Troughton,
That's right.
playing the Second Doctor. Would it be so bad if they played the first and second Doctors in a multi-Doctor story?
Ooh, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? I don't know.
It takes just a little shift of the brain to accept them. We've already seen them do that. We've already seen them in that docudrama special.
Yeah.
But imagine seeing them actually play the Doctor.
Well, I think if you go back to what we were saying about the Five Doctors, at the ages we weren't that aware of the earlier
we were
version of the
young.
Doctor, so we kind
yeah.
of accepted it. So maybe your average 6 or 7-year-old watching that sort of setup would go along with it. I don't know, but for your sad old fanboys like us who are knocking on a bit, I don't know, because I'm so attached to particularly Troughton. He's one of my favourites.
That's the thing. I mean, Troughton. My two favorite Doctors are Troughton and Smith. I have to
Right.
admit that they're the ones I love the most. I mean, disregarding, no, not disregarding, but taking into account every other Doctor. I mean, they're the ones I love the most.
For me, it's
When
Pat
I
and Tom.
saw, sorry,
For me, it's Pat and Tom.
Pat and Tom. Well, I find it hard. I love Tom. I absolutely adore him. I love most of his stories, but I often get the impression that I'm not watching Doctor Who. I'm watching
Tom
a
Baker.
stage show. It's like like for example, if you ever watched Rick Mayall, Rick Mayall.
Yeah.
Whenever you watch Rick Mayall in anything, you're thinking it's Rick Mayall.
Yeah.
I feel that same way about Tom.
Yeah.
Even when he's playing the Doctor.
I think, although when you say that, certainly my take on it is that every Doctor that's being cast certainly in the classic series, has effectively been cast to play themselves. It's one of those roles that
True.
there's no.
True.
I mean, James Bond has got certain aspects of his character that you have to adhere to, you have to stick to. But with the Doctor, you can make it what you want. And invariably, I know Peter Davison had a real issue with trying to figure out how to play the part. And Pertwee, Baker, Davison, particularly those three, they play themselves, really.
They do. They do. I mean, especially Pertwee and Baker. I mean, Pertwee or Pertwee, he's. I don't know. I think you mentioned it in another podcast, but this whole sort of action man,
Yeah.
hiya thing that he does. You know, this sort of what's he doing? Venusian
Aikido, yeah.
Aikido and all that sort of stuff. And you never believe it for a second because you just see this big fop with big puffy hair, clicking his hand about like a cockroach looking for water, and it doesn't really work.
You get the idea that he's a very larger than life character away from the screen,
Absolutely.
and I think this was very much bringing that character to the Doctor. And I think because he'd had so many years of being known for comedy, that he wanted to have a go at playing something straight, and he wanted to be an action hero. And I think that's the way he took it.
I think that what he did with the Doctor was brilliant, and especially in, you know, like in the first two series that Pertwee did, you know, from
Season 7 was his
Spearhead
first
from
one.
Space. Yeah, sorry?
Season 7 was his first series, wasn't it?
Season 7, yeah, like Spearhead from Space to Inferno. Brilliant. Terror of the Autons to... What was the final one of that?
The Demons, I think, wasn't it?
Demons. Those were brilliant. I mean, that was brilliant Doctor Who. That was wonderful.
Yeah.
But I think as he went on, coming back to the three Doctors, it did become a bit the John Pertwee show, as the same thing happened with Tom Baker.
Yeah, Tom.
As maybe it did happen with David Tennant. I don't know.
No, I think Tom certainly in the early days, I think he was just loving the fact that he was actually working, because when they hired him, he was working on a building site. So obviously he went from that to being a hero to children across the UK and probably elsewhere. And after a while, because he kind of settled in, you get the impression that, you know, his tendency to want to add things and change the way things are done, I think there's a complacency there, and it certainly his last series, last couple of series, certainly the penultimate one, he's just being silly, and I still like it. I can still watch it.
Oh God, yeah, I absolutely do.
But come the final series, he's quite morose and quite, well, he's grumpy Tom.
He's grumpy Tom.
Yeah, and
you know, can you imagine him in the Five Doctors? That
Oof.
Tom in the Five Doctors.
Well, bear in mind as well, also, I mean, he'd only left a year or two before, so it would have been quite difficult for him coming back, having to play second fiddle to someone else.
I've never thought of it like that. You're absolutely right.
And I'm sure they've all got egos,
like
as we do.
Yeah, it's like, imagine you, Mark, going back into to help out in a job that you used to do.
Mm-hmm.
That would feel a bit odd, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's very, very strange to be put in that position, I'm sure.
So, I mean, we shouldn't expect actors or whatever, despite how iconic they are, to feel differently.
Yeah.
So, like, if he had been in the Five Doctors, it would have been Tom and Peter Davison. I, I I can't imagine how the Five Doctors would have been with the two of them actually, with them both acting together. He would have dominated, I think.
Yeah, yeah, it's a tough one to try and guess around, really. I'd like to think that it would have been a good show, but I think they had to do what they did, and Tom at that point didn't really want to be associated with it, and you can understand that to a degree,
I can, yeah, absolutely, I can.
particularly if you're trying to get acting jobs and you're trying to get away from being known as Doctor Who. The last thing you want to do is go on and be Doctor Who.
But having said that, he's always said, or he said recently, that he regrets that decision.
Yeah. Yeah, hindsight obviously puts a different perspective on it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I wonder, I mean, even when I watch The Five Doctors, I watch it and I see John Pertwee looking older.
Yeah.
He does look older.
Mm.
Patrick Troughton, bizarrely, does not.
You can see it in his
He
face a
works,
bit.
you can see it in his face, but for some reason he works more than Pertwee. Um, okay, Richard Hurndall's playing Hartnell,
Mm-hmm.
so that's okay. But I don't know. There's something about the Five Doctors that makes me, and I say again, as I said at the beginning, it I don't take it seriously as a Doctor Who story. I take it more like a sidestep, a dream.
Well, why don't we talk about a story that you can take seriously? Why don't we talk about Silver Nemesis?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh my God, Mark. When's the last time you watched Silver Nemesis?
Well, again, I dusted off the DVD. Admittedly, it's not one that I watch very often. But yeah, I stuck it in the old machine this week and watched it.
I bought, okay, I saw it originally when it came out,
Mm-hmm.
and then I bought the video, which
Yeah.
had a green cover, like a green celebratory cover. I don't know why green.
Oh, I mean, if you're a bit of a nerd like me, how did that feel having all these uniform VHS covers and then seeing this green thing sticking out the middle of it?
Oh my God. Yeah, it ruins everything. You've got the Doctor Who logo in the right place along the other videos, and then Silver Nemesis comes along and ruins everything. To me, really, it looks like a 1980s erotic European straight to video telefilm.
Are we still talking about the
Really.
cover here or the actual program?
No, the program. Well, both. It's so bad. I mean, I don't know what you think, but I think it's the worst Doctor Who story ever.
Oh,
One of the worst Doctor Who stories ever.
see, I find it hard to really pick a worst because I always like to see the best in things. Which is,
I do too, but I
yeah,
couldn't find anything there.
it is
I don't
hard.
know.
It is hard, isn't it?
Did you watch it when it came out?
Yeah, I kind of. By the time Sylvester McCoy took over, I remember watching Time in the Rani, and for me, that was. How old would I have been then? I would have been about
13, 12,
13, maybe getting on for 14.
Yeah.
And being that age, it got kind of embarrassing to watch. No, I'm not being nasty to the people who made it or anything like that. It's just at that age,
They did the best
you
with
want to
what
be
they
cool.
had.
You want to be seen as being cool, and
Yeah,
Doctor Who
yeah.
wasn't really cool. And I kind of fell out of love with it for a while, and I kind of came back to it when Remembrance came on.
Well, exactly. What would have made a better anniversary story? Okay, it was the 25th anniversary, the silver anniversary.
Yeah.
I think Remembrance of the Daleks would have made a better anniversary story.
Hands
than
down, it's a better
Silver
story.
Nemesis.
Absolutely, hands
It's a
down. You
better
won't get any argument
story.
from me on that.
I can't understand what's the guy who wrote it? Kevin
Oh,
Clark? Is that who
yeah.
wrote it?
I think that's right. Yeah.
I can't understand why Remembrance of the Daleks. They could have just shifted the running order.
Well, they shifted it a few times, didn't they, in order to get Silver Nemesis aired on the anniversary, because they'd filmed certain stories and they were going to be aired in a particular order, and then the schedule changed, so they had to then change the order again. And I think it meant that, I've got to try and remember I get this right, the Happiness Patrol moved to, I think it was the final one in that season. So yeah, there were lots of
In that
shifting around.
season, yeah, it was either that or the circus one, Greatest Show in the Galaxy, or
Yeah.
something like that.
Hmm.
The only thing is about that, I mean, they said it was okay. They tried to tie it into anniversary by saying 25 years. 25 years ago, it was the assassination of Kennedy. 25
Yeah.
years before that, it was the dawn of World War II. 25 years before that, it was the dawn of the First World War.
Hmm.
It would just it looks awful, and it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's a really bad. It's bad by any standard of Doctor Who.
I
I can't understand why they put that as a 25th anniversary
There's a
story.
lot going on in as much as you've got these neo Nazis, you've got Lady Painfort, and
Yeah.
you've got the Cybermen as well. And I think there's too many elements there. I think it's not helping the story.
You've got the Cybermen who turn all silver, and they can be killed by gold, which has already been established
Yeah, I
in
think from
Revenge of the
Revenge, yeah,
Cybermen.
from Revenge
Yeah.
onwards, that just gradually gets, uh, it just diminishes whatever standing they had, and it just gradually gets worse and worse and worse. And by the time you get to Silver Nemesis, yeah, it's becomes a bit of a joke.
I mean, and with all respect to Sylvester McCoy, okay, they must have said to him, okay, it's the 25th anniversary of Doctor Who. We're going to do something special.
Hmm.
And instead, he runs around acting like a buffoon, essentially, and puts on his little glasses and says, "You will follow me," or whatever he does. You know, he's trying to escape from the Buckingham Palace
Hmm.
or the Windsor Palace guards. And then you've got the Nazis who look like they're just out of central casting. And then you've got the two young guys strung up, hanging from a tree. Do you remember that bit?
Are you social workers?
Are you social workers? Okay, that was for John Nathan Turner. That's obviously his little personal thing. And it's awful. It's not even a good story, let alone a good Doctor Who story.
It's a shame
Remembrance
because,
of
as you say, Remembrance is
It's
fantastic.
brilliant. It's fantastic. Why didn't he? Why not that? Because they've got Todder's Yard. They've got everything going back to the beginnings of Doctor Who.
Hmm.
Why not have that as the 50th anniversary story? That would have worked a lot better.
I know Sylvester
The,
McCoy gets a bit of stick from certain areas of fandom, but I think he's great in that story, and I think he's quite an underrated actor.
oh, absolutely. I think he was working with the script he was given.
Yeah,
It's not his fault.
it's
I
like
mean,
Colin. Really, he was
yeah.
given this stuff to do, and he unfortunately gets the brunt of it because he's the face on the front of the screen.
Well, that's it, because Sylvester McCoy, even in Silver Nemesis, he's good in it. He's a good actor.
Hmm.
He's doing what he can. And I tell you what, you've got Sophie Aldred,
Hmm.
and she is at her most doe-eyed, beautiful gamine in that story. She's beautiful. She's wonderful in that story. She really, you get the character
Yeah,
in that one. And the story is just awful. I don't get why they chose that as a 25th anniversary, the 25th anniversary story.
the real kick in the teeth
Remembrance,
as well. Sorry to cut you off. The real kick in the
sorry,
teeth is at the very end where they're kind of pleased with themselves. They've defeated the Cybermen, and Ace turns around and says, "Oh yeah, just like you nobbled the Daleks." And you think they're even getting to the point of blatantly saying they've just repeated the same story again, but
Oh,
worse.
exactly. It's even the same spaceship.
Yeah.
It's more or less the same spaceship. The Cybermen, it could have been anyone. Do you not agree, Mark? It
But
could have been anyone.
I mean, just little things like in Remembrance, they do a pretty decent job of making a spaceship. You get to see it land
Yeah.
in the school play
Yeah.
yard.
Absolutely.
And then you look at Silver Nemesis, and you've got, I'm sure it's slightly more complicated than this, but you've got something that resembles a photograph that's been sort of, well, whatever the 80s equivalent of Photoshop was, and just kind of effectively duplicated, and it just looks really naff, which is a
Really,
shame.
I mean, there's a shot of the spaceship floating over the English countryside,
Yeah.
and then it lands. But because there's no shadow, because there's no perspective, it looks seriously like you just held it in front of your eye and set it down. It doesn't look like a spaceship has landed. It looks like a special effect has been pasted.
Yeah.
It looks awful, and it seems mostly like that was filmed on location.
Yeah.
Unless I'm wrong, it seems to be, and it looks terrible. It looks like a straight to video 80s Euro pornographic.
Well, if you bought it with
dubbing.
that sensibility in mind, I think you would have been even more disappointed.
You would have been really disappointed. You would have been really. But I tell you what, I mean, at the end, you've got all the whole stuff. Doctor who are you, Doctor? And I don't know, it doesn't really work because you haven't had any sort of build up. And okay, this is supposed to be the silver anniversary. I don't know if you remember around the time of the 25th anniversary, they released a book, Peter Haining.
Peter Haining. When I was a kid, for the 20th, he produced a book called The Key to Time.
Yes,
A hardback book.
yes,
My parents
absolutely,
gave me
yeah.
that for my birthday,
I've got
and
that,
I read
yeah.
it from cover to cover.
Yeah.
Loved it.
And he produced a whole history of the series. Okay, very simplified version
Yeah.
and whatever. It started a lot of the common fan myths about Doctor Who, that book, apparently. You know, the whole thing that William Hartnell didn't want to work with a certain actor because he was gay and a Jew and all that sort of stuff, which turned out not to be true.
Yeah.
You know, that all came from that. But again, what did he have to work with? You know, he wasn't being nasty to William Hartnell. It was just that's the information he had to hand. But that was around that time, and I remember it was 25th anniversary, and they had the Doctor Who 25th anniversary build up to 25th anniversary. Oh my God, it's going to be wonderful, and we get Silver Nemesis. Which is just really one of the worst stories of that. I mean, really, it doesn't look good. Even on paper, it doesn't look good.
Just kind of feels like they spent so much time and effort trying to make sure it went out on time that they didn't really focus their energies on producing something that translated well on the screen.
Exactly. I mean, I think you'd agree. What other story would you have in its place?
Oh, you mentioned Remembrance, and it's the obvious choice, isn't it? You know.
Yeah.
You look at that, and it's got all the elements in there. It's got nods to the past. It's got the Daleks, who, you know, as a kid, I always preferred the Cybermen, and there's always that hope that they will eventually do a decent Cyberman story. We've got Neil Gaiman this year, so I think if anyone can do a decent version of their story, I'm hoping it's going to be him.
I think he will not let anyone down. I mean, this is a guy, Neil Gaiman is a guy who knows his stuff, full stop. I can't see him writing a mediocre Cyberman story, let alone a mediocre Doctor Who story.
I love his work. I've read quite a few of his books, and I'm no great reader. My attention span has gotten worse over the years, but I think he's fantastic. And to get someone of his caliber on the show, I think was a real master stroke, really.
Do you think he will reinvent the Cyberman?
I don't know. It's kind of been left open because when Russell did his version, you had the alternate universe, which I think was quite a
Yeah,
clever ploy, really, because it left it open for somebody later down the line to revisit the sort of original mythos from the classic series.
yeah.
Whether
But
that will be spare parts, as a certain friend of mine wants to see envisaged on the screen.
is that Lee?
Yeah, a chap called Lee Rawlings does a little podcast called the Blue Box
Well, here's
Podcast.
my theory about that. My theory is that the world that eventually becomes Mondas is the parallel Earth that we've already seen.
That's a clever idea.
That's the one. It somehow spins into our universe. This world where the Cybermen, as they seem to be called, somehow that planet, that version of Earth, spins into our universe, as if our universe is the Doctor Who universe, and that's where it comes from. That's the way I look at it.
I know you like to try and avoid spoilers as much as possible, so I don't know if you've seen this, but they do look quite different from the odd little photo that I've seen. They're not. It's not a drastic change of design, but they are different from the Cybers ones.
They are. I have seen them, and I do think they look a lot different. I think they look more. What's the word I'm looking for? Svelte?
Yeah,
Not svelte.
they've
Is
ditched
that right?
they've ditched the bell bottom flares, a bit more streamlined.
The old ones didn't look as if they could run.
Yeah,
These ones look as if these could run at you and scare the crap out of you. You know what I mean?
I'm hoping it's going to be a doozy, and I've got real faith in Neil Gaiman to do a good job.
I mean, this is a guy who has written so many amazing. Apparently, in fact, his new series of Neverwhere is coming on to BBC Radio 4
Yeah,
shortly.
that's coming very soon, isn't it?
That's really soon.
With
And
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh my God! I didn't know he was in it. Is he in
Yeah.
it? Oh my God! Oh, so it's going to be amazing.
I would hope so.
I mean, this is a guy. He knows his right. He is intelligent enough to know both sides of the fence. He knows what it's like to be a fan. He knows what it's like to be a producer or writer. So he will have come up with something that is going to knock our socks off, essentially.
I hope so.
But we haven't talked about Dimensions in Time.
We haven't. Of course, before Dimensions in Time, there was going to be Lost in the Dark Dimension, wasn't it? Have you heard of that?
I was going to say that. I didn't. I'm surprised. Oh my goodness. I'm so. What do you know about that, Mark?
Not masses. I
that?
know they were keen to. I think initially it was going to be something that was going to be released for video only, because at that point the show had been off the air for a few years, and then there came a point where someone high up with the BBC, I think it may have been Alan Yentob was in charge at the time, decided no, let's put it out on the TV. Then, of course, the race was on to try and get it out for November of that year to make sure it came in on time for the anniversary. And I mean, I don't know the reasons. There's a few reasons that get mooted. The whole thing of budget was one of the key reasons that's been quoted as why it didn't make it to the screen. The other thing, which I don't know if you've seen, there's a documentary on the Doctor Who DVDs. It's called The 7-Year Hitch.
Yeah, that's a brilliant documentary.
It's really good.
One of the best documentaries on a DVD.
Absolutely. And of course, there were negotiations going on with Spielberg and other interested parties about making a US co-production. In the end, they ended up agreeing to do this thing with Fox, which unfortunately didn't really lead to anything else. And that, I think, put the kibosh on it for once and for all. I think Tom Baker was going to be the lead actor in Lost in the Dark Dimension, unless I'm mistaken.
Well, the Lost in the Dark Dimension, it was gonna start with the Tom Baker Doctor, the Fourth Doctor, having survived will not survive, but having lived after the fall from the Pharos project
Hmm.
um, telescope, he would have fallen down, landed on the ground, but he wouldn't have regenerated.
Mm.
That's where it started. And he would have, instead of regenerating, he would have lived on as a sort of a cripple, essentially,
Hmm.
but would have got better,
Yeah.
obviously. And they proposed this series, and they were gonna this film, and he was going to be the main star. It was going to be Tom Baker as the Doctor,
Yeah.
and the fifth Doctor was going to be seen fighting the Cybermen.
Hmm.
The sixth Doctor was going to be seen with the Ice Warriors defending them
Hmm.
in some sort of intergalactic court, and the seventh Doctor was going to be. I can't remember what happened to the seventh Doctor, but something was going to happen to him. I think he was going to die.
Maybe he was
So
busy filming the air zone solution.
Have you ever seen the Air Zone Solution?
Oh, I've seen little bits of it. I've never felt quite safe enough to watch it in one sitting. My
No,
brain
don't
might
watch.
implode.
If you want to see Nicola Bryant go to bed with Colin Baker, don't watch it.
Ooh, that's a scary thought.
Not in a graphic way, but
No, I think I've
it's
seen the
pretty.
clip where they're just sitting in bed and it's kind of like pillow talk.
See, most Doctor Who fans imagine being in bed with Nicola Bryant, but I mean, I know I certainly
I
do.
think Ned Fountain does.
Oh, Ned Fountain. There are things I could teach that man, but the Dark Dimension. They went so far as to film a title sequence,
Did they? I didn't realise that.
and they filmed the Jim Henson Creature Shop created a Cyberman.
I've seen, I think they were sort of design drawings and they look pretty cool.
It looks a bit like a cyber creature mixed with Wolverine.
Yeah,
Right, it looks a bit like that. Looks
because
a bit
Graham
like that.
Harper was
And
going to direct it, wasn't he?
Graham Harper was roped into it. So they got all these people involved and whatnot. And then the BBC made an announcement saying, we're going to do this Doctor Who story. And then about 2 days later, they said, no, it's not happening. Because really what was happening was the BBC were having negotiations with Steven Spielberg's company. I think it's
Amblin,
Amblin.
yeah.
Amblin, and that's what led ultimately to the TV movie, the Paul McGann TV movie. But you can be thankful that they didn't make this because it would have been awful. It would have been awful.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been good. It was very much a continuity bit. You couldn't have watched it unless you'd known everything about Doctor Who.
Yeah, I mean, they went for that quite a bit in the TV movie, didn't they? They were shoveling in the continuity left, right, and centre. But yeah, I still have a bit of affection for that one. But
I do as well. Yeah, I do as well. But the thing that worries me the most is that it would have.
You think it would have killed off the franchise for good?
I think it would have. I think it would have killed off the franchise for good, as you said, and I think it was really for fans. But you know something very interesting? About a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, I saw the script. The script is still in circulation, though as something else.
Okay.
It's nothing to do with Doctor Who, but it's still the same script. Because of the line of work I'm in, I get to see scripts of things.
Yeah.
That script still exists. It's been anything remotely connected to Doctor Who's been taken out.
Yeah.
But it still exists as a script. And it's not a bad script. It's not a bad story. It's time travel and an enigmatic character and all that sort of stuff. but it, as Doctor Who, it would have killed the show dead.
Yeah.
Whereas the 1996 TV movie, yes, it sort of paused Doctor Who,
Yeah.
but it didn't kill it.
No.
You know, you would have had, I mean, Tom Baker was the Doctor in the script, and he would have regenerated. Are you ready for this?
Go
He
on.
would have regenerated into Sylvester McCoy. Sylvester McCoy would have died, and a new Doctor would have come,
Okay.
which is a bit weird.
It's a bit odd, yeah. Yeah,
But
I'm
it
not
was
sure
for
about that.
it was for video sales. The whole thing they were looking at was video sales and all that sort of stuff.
But we still have dimensions in time to remember.
Oh, Mark, what are your memories of Dimensions in Time?
I think at that time it was a case of there hadn't been any new Doctor Who on telly for quite a while, and that sort of nerd gene in me forced me to sit and watch it. And bless it. I mean, it's great. They're all doing it for a good cause, and I don't know. It's just
Really bad.
oh, poor Louise Jameson.
Oh my God, running around
Yeah.
dressed in this sort of. The thing
She's
is,
wearing that sort
right.
of Pocahontas outfit with the. Oh,
Oh God.
no. Oh dear. Poor
Oh,
woman.
Mark.
I think she's
No,
fantastic, but
she
yeah.
it's and Lala Ward.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, she's sitting there in the garage, and she goes, Doctor Who? She even says the line.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But I tell you what, I had never, before, I don't know if you remember the 30th anniversary, there was a Radio Times cover,
Mm.
and you had Sylvester McCoy, Peter Davison, Colin Baker, and John Pertwee, and Tom Baker on the cover of the Radio Times.
Yeah.
All dressed, looking as they did at the time,
Yeah.
but dressed as the Doctor. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't. I remember. I think there were publicity shots where they're all sitting on Bessie and holding Pudsey
Yes.
bears and stuff, and
Yeah.
yeah, bless them. They were, time hadn't been so kind to some of the older guys. Peter Davison still looked
Even
pretty
Colin
much
Baker
like
at that
he did
time,
before.
he looked okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Colin Baker, you could have seen him as a Doctor. So they did all this, they hyped all this, and they did the 30th anniversary. I don't know who published it, whether it was Marvel or someone else. They published the 30th anniversary episode guide, every episode up till now, up till Survival, I suppose.
Yeah.
And they did this whole big thing. Anyway, at that time, I was reading the New Adventures.
Yeah.
Doctor Who New Adventures and all that. And they said Doctor Who's going to be back in November. Children in Need, blah, blah, blah. The Doctors are going to arrive in Albert Square, EastEnders.
Alarm bells ringing.
So, yeah, well, exactly. But I thought, okay, I'm going to start watching EastEnders because there might be hints.
No. Oh,
There
you
might be
poor
hints.
man.
I know. I've never in my life watched EastEnders. I watched EastEnders. I watched it to see if there were any hints, any like sounds of TARDISes in the background, anything. I sat there the first time and the last time in my life watched EastEnders.
Did you never notice Doc Cotton's badge for mathematical excellence?
I didn't notice that. That's Adric. Adric lives. I sat there and I watched it for like 4 days. Like, no, they haven't said anything about Doctor Who yet, but it must be coming. I was so earnest and so much of a Doctor Who fan. I watched EastEnders for like 2 weeks before the Children in Need broadcast. Children in Need broadcast comes on. I've never been so disappointed in my life. I think. I really think even
part of me respects you for that. For actually having
really
to sit and
was
watch that for 2 weeks.
I even bought the 3D glasses and everything, and they had little Pudsey bears all over them.
Yeah.
And I sat and watched it.
And wasn't it? I might be misremembering this, but didn't they show it during Noel's house party.
They showed the second part during Noel's house party. Mark, they showed it during that.
I mean,
And John Pertwee was
it
there.
wasn't a million miles away from Mr. Blobby, was it?
It
Those
really
sort of
was.
production values.
It was so bad. And I remember thinking, I can't square this with the New Adventures. I can't square this with Doctor Who that I've seen before. I don't know what to do. I remember thinking that I don't know what to do.
So
And it
I
really
take it you
shocked
won't
me.
be trying to get hold of Ian Levine's 60-minute redux of it, or whatever it is he's done.
I won't even consider looking at that if that's the diplomatic way of saying it. I I I I can't talk about Ian Levine anything because it's terrible. But really, it's the worst, most embarrassing moment of my televisual life. Watching Dimensions in Time.
I bet you phoned all your mates and said, "You got to watch this. It's Doctor
I
Who. It's
did.
coming
I
back."
did. I did. I really thought it was Doctor Who coming back because the Radio Times had put them on the cover
Yeah.
and made it look like it was a big 30th anniversary thing. And then when it came on, and I'd watched EastEnders for a week or 2 weeks beforehand, waiting for clues.
That's the saddest thing of the lot, I think. You poor man.
I think that's pretty bad. I think that's pretty pathetic. It was awful. I mean, it wasn't even the fact that the doctors changed. The fact that the companions changed. So you'd like
Yeah.
Sophie
Yeah,
Aldred,
mixing and
who
matching.
God, mixing and matching. Sophie Aldred transformed into, I don't know.
I believe
Was
the hip kids these days say it's a mashup.
it was a. I won't say the word I was going to say, but it was really bad. Do you remember watching it? What did
Yeah.
you feel when you watched it, Mark?
It was just embarrassing. I think, when would that have been? 93. So I would have been about 20. Oh dear. This is
Yeah,
like an
and
old
your
man
mates
looking
would
back
have
over his
known that
life.
you
isn't it?
like Doctor Who.
Yeah. No, I think I watched about I think I watched the first half. I can't remember if I watched the second half. I think I was that disgusted. I just couldn't watch anymore.
It was really bad. And okay, but having said that, Lost in the Dark Dimension would have been worse.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think that it was seen as a frivolous bit of fun, just, like a 10, 15-minute segment stuck into, a fundraiser again, and that was it.
There was a time, Mark, where Doctor Who was seen in the same light as Are You Being Served? You know what I mean? It was like
Yeah.
a kitsch piece of the past that we bring up now and again to laugh at how we used to be. That's how it used to be.
Well, yeah, I think that certainly before the new series came back, the show's standing was pretty low.
It really
It become a
was.
bit of a joke, really, hadn't it?
It really had become a bit of a joke. I mean, I'm not trying to be controversial, and I really am not, but I think having watched Silver Nemesis recently, I think, you know what? I understand why it was cancelled. I
Yeah.
understand why Doctor Who was taken off air.
I mean, there were lots of things going on in the background. I think you had someone who was in charge at the top who didn't really like Doctor Who and didn't want it to continue, and they were having to do more and more with less and less. They were reducing the number of episodes, they were reducing the budget, and looking at things like Ghostlight. You got a 4-part story squeezed into 3 parts, and it's it just kind of gradually came to a point where you couldn't really see any other option for them but to just consign it to
and to a scrap heap, essentially. If you, Mark, if you don't mind me asking, if you had to show any piece of classic or old-fashioned Doctor Who to someone who'd never seen it before, what would you show them?
It's a tricky one. I would probably show. My gut reaction would be to go for something like City of Death because
Yeah.
it's quite close in tone to what the new show is. So that would possibly appeal more to a modern audience. Having said that, if you sat them down in front of that and then made them watch The Horns of Nyman after, you would be in for a bit of a shock. I love The Horns of Nyman. I've had a love-hate relationship with that story. Loved it as a kid when I watched it. Thought it was amazing. Watched it again on UK Gold in the 90s and thought, my God, this is absolute dreck. And then buckled and bought the DVD and watched it again and fell in love with it again. But I think you can watch it in different ways. You know, you look at something like Horns of Nyman, it's you know, everyone uses the phrase pantomime. If you watch it in that way, it's fun. You know, you're watching Tom Baker and Graham Crowden trying to outdo each other on the sort of over the top stakes, and it's great. It's fantastic.
I mean, Graham Crowden in that is just it's pantomime, it's overacting, but you know what? It's lovely. That's what you want.
I think he was considered for the part of the Doctor at one point, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He really was. And you know that whole "You're doomed, you're all doomed,
you fools,
you'll die, you fools!" Ah! You know, brilliant. I mean, that's wonderful. But I mean, you couldn't do that now.
No.
You couldn't do that now. But at the same, you're absolutely right. I would be exactly the same as you, Mark. I would show City of Death to someone.
I mean, Caves of Androzani came out topping the poll not that long ago, and that's another great episode, in my opinion. I know friends of mine aren't so keen on it, but I think it's. I think the main criticism from some people is that it's not Doctor Who. It's like an action show, but I love it. I think it's a great story. I think it's a great send off for Peter Davison.
I think it's great. The Caves of Androzani is one of the. I mean, it wouldn't be in my personal top 10, but it's amazing. It really shows you what can be done with these characters, with the Doctor, and he's dying, and he's going to die, and he knows where he's heading, and he knows full well he's about to regenerate. That's the thing that I love about the Caves of Androzani.
Yeah,
he knows he's about to regenerate, and it's dark. I don't know what it is about the Caves of Androzani, but it is really, really good.
I think it's relentless. You know, as soon as he steps out of the TARDIS, that's it. He's a marked man. You know, well, everyone knows at that point that this is his last story. So each cliffhanger that comes along, you're thinking, "Oh, is this it? Is this where it's going to happen?" And I just love it. I can watch it again and again.
I think it's one of the best. I think it's also to do with the direction. Graham Harper, it's the way he's done it. Peter Davison, it's very subtle. It's very, I don't know what the word is. It's very, you don't get exactly what's happening until the last moment. I don't know what it is. There's something about it. It sort of sneaks into you.
Yeah.
A little bit.
You've got all the nice little subtle plot twists, like the whole thing about Glenister. Is it Robert Glenister? His character turning out to be an android. Spoilers. And Sharaz Jek, I think, is a great one-off villain. Fantastic. And you've got Morgus as well, doing the whole sort of Shakespearean breaking the fourth wall, staring straight down into the camera and coming out with his little machinations. I think it's just got everything that I would want from a story. It's really very good,
yeah. I mean, for me, for the most part, and again, I'm probably going to get slapped for this. I tend to see the new series of Doctor Who as the pinnacle of what Doctor Who is. I think everything that's happened since 2005 is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, there's been a couple of lapses,
Hmm.
but Case of Androzani is up there with any Doctor Who story ever.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you look at, I know it's not very popular, I know it's not liked, I know that people get very angry about it, but The End of Time,
Yeah.
okay? A lot of people don't like that. Fair enough. Good for them. But I would put up The End of Time as a perfect example of what what's best about Doctor Who. I think that's a brilliant story. I think that's okay, maybe not well executed.
Mm.
You know, the whole stuff with what's his name? The guy who owns the mansion that owns the Ark.
Yeah. I forget his name now.
That well, exactly. We don't care about that, but it works well.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that and the Doctor regenerates and
What saves it for me
go.
is the stuff with David Tennant and Bernard Cribbins. I think there's
Oh
some
my
lovely moments. It's
God.
real, tear
It's
jerking stuff.
heartbreaking. It's
Yeah.
heartbreaking. And people hate the End of Time the same way they hate the new Daleks. You know, the Daleks that were in the Victory of the Daleks. And I
Hmm.
think, okay, yeah, it's not for us, it's for the kids.
Yeah.
And I've yet to see a kid that doesn't love the new Daleks.
Mm.
But that's not our business. Um, that whole thing at the End of Time, that's like the kids of Androzani, whenever the doctor's in the cockpit and he's staring down the barrel,
Yeah.
he's driving the spaceship and he sees it coming towards him,
That's it.
and he thinks that's exactly the same as
Hmm.
the End of Time. I don't get why people have so much hate for it. Maybe I'm being too much of a geek looking at that.
I think people will always have their favourites, and I think that's one of the things I love about being a fan of this show is everyone, because you've got this huge expanse of stories, everyone's got their favourite Doctor, everyone's got their favourite stories, and not everyone will agree. But I love that. I think it's
I
such
love
a
that too.
great
Yeah,
thing about this fandom.
that's what it is. It's not like Star Trek. You know, everyone will probably settle on a favorite episode. You know, they'll always say, "Oh, the episode where Kirk gets multiplied into two and there's a mirror universe,"
Hmm.
whatever the hell it is. With Doctor Who, will always there's always so much room for discussion and dislike and love. You know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah.
It's incredible, really. I mean, I've met people who absolutely hate the TV movie,
Yeah.
and I don't like it very much. I think it's awful. But you know what? There's people who absolutely love elements of that and love the fact that Paul McGann's the Doctor and he is the bloody Doctor.
Yeah.
And you know what? Go for it. That's wonderful. Let's not be precious about it. Let's not own it. Let's just share it. You know what I mean? It's incredible feeling, really. I'm getting too philosophical here.
I was going to say, what a lovely note to leave that subject on.
I haven't even mentioned the two Doctors yet.
Oh yeah,
Per-
this is your favourite?
it's my favorite Doctor Who story,
I mean,
but I
that's a
won't go into
controversial
it
choice
now.
for starters because it divides people a lot. I think.
I know it's not a anniversary story, but it's
Mm.
got two Doctors and a story that links the two Doctors. And I think that's how a multi-Doctor story should be.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll talk about that another time.
So away from the subject of Doctor Who,
Yes.
I always do this. I'm going to put you on the spot. Is there something that you've really been enjoying apart from revisiting all these fantastic or less than fantastic anniversary stories?
Well, there's three things really. The first one is Being Human. I don't know if you watched that, Mark.
I've seen the
Being
early
Human.
series. I haven't been following the later ones. So I've seen I think the first series and maybe a bit of the second series. So I've got a bit of catching up to do.
I would really recommend to anyone who's anyway interested in cult TV or
Hmm.
I'd advise anyone to watch Being Human. The British version. Also, I've heard that the American version is really, really good. So
Hmm.
I'd watch that. I'd also recommend. I've been catching up on old Red Dwarf.
Ah, okay.
I don't know if you watched any of the new series.
Yeah, I did actually. I
What did
quite
you think
enjoyed
about
them.
that? Did you?
Yeah.
Oh my God! I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. Um, I've been watching some of the old Red Dwarf
Hmm.
series up till now, and the thing that I don't know, the thing that occurred to me is that the Red Dwarf view of what is canon
Mm.
and what is official sort of made me
Changes with
think
the
of,
weather.
well, yeah, it sort of does. I sort of think, oh, goodness, wouldn't it be good if Doctor Who fans felt the same way?
Yeah. The
You know,
life would be too perfect if that was the case.
have you been watching Black Mirror, Mark?
Oh, I've seen the first series, but I haven't got around to seeing the second series. So that'll be gracing my screen on 4OD at some point.
Well, watch that. But I mean, especially watch Red Dwarf.
I've been watching Weekly
Um,
Wipe, which is another one of Charlie
oh my
Brooker's
goodness, that's brilliant. That's
outputs.
brilliant. What about, have you ever watched something called Moonbase 3? Is that what it's called?
Oh, is that the Barry Letts thing?
The old thing, yeah, the really
Yeah, I
old
haven't
one.
seen that.
It's awful.
Oh dear.
Don't watch it. Don't watch it. Right unless there's so much that. So that's what I've been watching. What about you? What have you been watching?
Well, I've been listening.
Oh,
If you follow me on Twitter or happen to come across me online in other ways, I've been obsessing about a Radio 4 comedy show called Cabin Pressure.
oh my God, that's brilliant.
It is superb. I
It
love it. I've
really
come to this
is,
very
yeah.
late, so I appreciate there's lots of people who have been listening since series one, and I'm just some guy who just Johnny come lately who turned up and started saying, "Yeah, it's great," but I love it. I think they've just finished the fourth series, being broadcast on Radio
Yeah, but,
4. So if you're outside the UK, I don't know if it's changed, but as far as I'm aware, you should still be able to get access to radio shows through iPlayer wherever you are. Whereas I know a lot of the TV stuff is region locked. So if you get a chance to listen to it, it's a really fun series. It's
it's brilliant. It's like imagine Blackadder goes forth, but set inside an independent airline. I know that doesn't give a good idea, but it sort of is like that.
it's hilarious. It's written by John Finnemore,
Yeah.
who's been on other Radio 4 things. I tend to listen to stuff like the News Quiz and the Now Show. He's a very funny guy. He also stars in it as Arthur, who's not the brightest guy, but very, very funny. His mum is played by Stephanie Cole,
Mm.
who's fantastic. She was in Tenko, if any of you guys out there have seen that, and something called Waiting for God with
Oh my God, with
Graham
Crowden,
Crowden,
of
as
course.
mentioned
Yeah,
before.
there
Yeah.
we go.
And there's is it Kenneth Allen plays Douglas, the
Roger Allen.
Roger Allen, that's the
Allen.
guy. Roger Allen
Yeah.
plays Douglas, who's the assistant pilot, or however you want to call it. And then some guy called Benedict Cumberbatch. Have you heard of him? He's been
He's
in
the fella who
something.
plays. Yeah, he's like he always plays the little weedy guy.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
was
like
in.
a sort of
Is it Sherlock? He was in that.
yeah, one of those
So,
things.
some
BBC Three.
Yeah, some minor film called Star Trek
Yeah,
2.
something to
Yeah, I think
do
he's
with
in that. And The Hobbit. There's a very low
yeah,
budget
yeah.
film coming out in New Zealand. He's
He's
in
in
that.
nothing important.
No. He
No,
plays the
no,
sort of
no.
the, I suppose you call him the main character.
Yeah, if
And
he
it's
wants.
brilliant. It's so funny. They're half an hour each, just hilarious stuff. You can get them on download from Audio Go. I don't know if that's the case right away through the world, but certainly in the UK you can get it that way. I imagine you might be able to get it on iTunes or Audible or something along those lines. But yeah, if
It's
you get the
really worth a
chance,
listen. It's
it's
really worth a listen. It's brilliant. It's one of the best. It's up there with Blackadder and Faulty Towers. It's one of the funniest things you'd listen to.
so yeah, that's my recommendation.
Well, my recommendation is, if you have the chance,
Mm.
well, I take Cabin Pressure, but Mark's already said it. Um, and if you don't have um, retrospective televisual opportunities, I I would say read The Dwarf,
Hmm.
but I would recommend very much Black Mirror by Charlie Brooker or Park and Recreation, but that's a bit too American, so maybe I'll
Yeah. We started recording that because they've started showing it on network TV over here. So yeah, I haven't had a chance to watch any episodes yet, but yeah, that's on my radar. Well, thank you, Declan, for coming on the show. It's been a real pleasure.
Mark, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm sorry for being illiterate and intemperate. I don't even know what that means.
Well, hopefully you'll come back and do it again sometime.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, my friend. And I just hope that the 50th anniversary will be as exciting as the 20th with a Raston Warrior robot with a zip up the back.
Oh, yes. If you listen right the way through on these shows, you may discover we have little Easter eggs that we like to leave. You can decide whether they're worth listening to or not. This time around, we're going to do something slightly different. We got a listener to the show called Lee Wright, who's a really creative chap. We have some really talented listeners, and he's a writer. He's also a musician, and he goes under the name of the Ephemeral Man. And he put out a track to download, and I figured it would be quite nice to give him a little bit of a plug. So if you hang
Wow.
around
Okay.
after the credits, you may well get to hear one of his tunes. The track we're going to put on is just him and an acoustic guitar, but he's done some really, quite frankly, disturbing ambient tracks. There was one I listened
Yeah.
to a while ago that he put out, and it had
Yeah.
these really creepy kind of keyboards and weird noises mixed in with the children's TV show The Flumps.
Oh my God, the flumps. Yeah, the little bit. You're like into electronic, aren't you?
Yeah, I like all sorts of stuff.
Oh my God, you're the same as me. Oh, that's brilliant.
So thanks again, Declan, and
Mark, thank you very much, my friend. That was a real pleasure. Thank you.
no problem. And we'll see you again next time.
See you soon. All the best. Thank you.
Coming down now, taken for a modest slapped in the face, taken right out of this solution. I try. I try. I try. Getting better now. It's been a long time and it's starting to show. Nothing is clear but the things that you know. Still it's kind of fun, yeah, running around with a happiness gun, a happiness gun. Whoa. How can you smile when their faces are all black? How can you laugh when you've been stabbed in the back? The longer you wait is the further away from solution. I try. I try. I try. I try. I try. I try.